Inference engine, the models. So 3 different layers, or 3 different layers, I guess. The first point is just looking at the soil properties only. So taking the NSD data, taking the SMAP, putting it into a model of some sort, and producing more information, further derived soil properties or risk, vulnerability, or ecosystem services. The next step is to take the climate and layer that in as well. Then we start getting estimates of the drainage below the soil, soil climate-based risk, vulnerability, suitability for growing different crops, and irrigation schemes. It starts becoming quite useful information for them at that point. And then the next layer is to build in the land management as well. And then we can start calculating the nutrient loads, irrigation impacts, and where the really high risk sites are. So the models that are just within the soil, I call the pedo transfer functions. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of what we've been doing. This one is measurements of the soil water retention curve. So we get that data from the National Soils Database, which is laboratory information. We've done a statistical analysis to predict points on the water retention curve, which I'll show you in a moment. So particularly estimates of field capacity, wilting point, and saturation, which gives us available water, of course. So here's the soil moisture retention curve. The important thing here is there are 3 different curves for these 3 completely separate soils. And every soil will have a different shaped curve on this graph. So along the bottom we have the water content, and along the y-axis is the tension. And the key points are the wilting point, the point at which the plant can extract the water, and the field capacity where the gravity is taking the water. And the difference between the 2 is that all-important factor, the water holding capacity or the available water. And you can see that it is different so there's between that point there and there, so just that little bit there on the sand soil, that's its water holding capacity, whereas here it's this gap here for the clay soil, much greater water holding capacity. So from the NSD data, which is these measurements at specific tensions, we have that set that Sam talked about earlier, that 416 data points from the NSD. And we've done a regression type curve model on that, and so we now have a prediction. This is for the wilting point on this curve, so it's this water content value here for this all the soils, all those 416 points. And that's a pretty good model. We're quite happy with that prediction. That's a nice, stable model. And then we also have them for the other points on the curve, which then gives us predictions of the water holding capacity for all the soils that are within SMAP. This is a different pedo transfer function. This is for running Overseer. So this is the data input screen for the soil data into the Overseer model. And you can see here there are a number of boxes over here which have got very Overseer specific terminology used. So we had a talk with the developers to find out what they meant by Stony Matrix, and together we refined and developed a logical model where we could go into SMAP and make the appropriate association as to which boxes should be clicked. So this is the 3rd page of the fact sheet that you can get on SMAP online, and it says exactly what you should be populating each one of those boxes on Overseer with. So those are the pedo transfer functions that we've done. On soil vulnerability mapping, some of you will have seen this. We did this for Environment Canterbury a number of years ago. And we've looked at N and P leaching, bypass flow, and potential runoff. And just a quick look at one of those maps. This is the P leaching vulnerability, which Sam will come back to in the next section. And you can see there's some quite areas of here, very high leaching risk. This is leaching, not runoff. I've separated the 2. We're actually talking about the P going down here, and then the areas through here where it's of lower risk. Now let's take that second point and layer in the climate. So here we've taken the NIWA virtual climate stations, which are the points, which is daily data that's been calculated for each of those points for the rainfall and the PET. We irrigate at that point for when the soil is at a 50% profile available water. This takes into account, the model that we have takes into account the storage capacity of the soil and the capillary flow back up from the groundwater. So this is the modelling results. This is a bit of the wire wrapper. On the left-hand side, so this is a median rainfall year, and on the left-hand side here, it's the water deficit after the rainfall. So there's the legend through here, and sort of the 400 to 500 millimetres sort of up here on the areas here, and some of it is not much demand at all. The right-hand map is after the consented volume has been applied for irrigation. So there's still quite a high deficit in some parts of the wire wrapper. It's even more interesting when you look at the 10th percentile rainfall year. So again, left-hand side, water demand, just taking into account the soil and the rainfall. Right-hand side, adding in that consented volume of irrigation. And you can see there's still considerable demand in that area. Okay, so the next one, to layer in the land pressure. So that might be pressure, it might be past, it might be land use past that you're interested in, it might be current, or it might be potential, as in land use scenarios, what's going to happen if. And then we can look at the agricultural impact by taking in the climate, the soil, the farm type, all the different management options, the irrigation or dry land. We can look at the nutrient losses, contaminants, the soil health, end saturation. There's a whole range of things that we can look at. Just going to show you some examples of some of the work we've been doing in the Waihora, which some of you will be very familiar with. Left-hand side, that's the baseline scenario, so that's land use as of 2011, and this is the nitrate leaching estimates given the lookup information that we've done using Overseer and other modelling. You can see here that it's been driven by soil and also the land use. We've got some areas through here of quite high nitrate loads and areas over here where it's quite low. This map is where a development scenario with the Central Plains water scheme is being applied, and if you look carefully you can see sort of in this area there's a whole lot more sort of yellows and pinks starting to appear, so obviously the nitrate load is increasing. But the beauty of that is that you can then start to quantify it down here. So there's the baseline information and all the break it down by the end load by the different key land uses there to a total of 4.5, and in the development scenario jumping up by another 500 tonne. And then you can also look at the revenue, the financial effects as well. You can do more statistics on that same information, looking at the nitrate losses binned up sort of the 0 to 5 and so on to the greater than 60, do the count of number of farms that are in each of those different categories, and we can do the area that's involved in each of those categories. This is the same information but showing it in a bar plot, so you can, in a histogram rather, so you can see that the 15 to 20 has got the highest at whatever it is, 1200 odd, and then there's quite a tail here of some farms that have got really high nitrate loads, and you can see exactly how many farms are involved. I think I've got that on the next slide. Just a total load, you can divvy it up. So here you can see that the dairy's got quite a chunk of the load in the Selwyn Waihora. So is the sheep and beef. It's got a lower leaching rate, as you can see here, to the dairy, but there's more of it. So they're about the same. And then the arables, that block there. So there's all sorts of information and statistics that you can get out from this process once you've layered on the climate and the pressure. This map was one that I did for ECAN, looking at the difference. If you'd set your total load limit, and if you were to divvy it up over everyone equally, what would that then mean in terms of what farmers were doing now? And what it says is that all the brown ones would be less than their average load, which meant that they would have room to intensify. All the blue ones, given what they were now, say dairy on a very leaky land, would be quite considerably over their average value, and they would have to reduce down to it. So you can just get a sense there of how many farms that would impact if you were to do a particular allocation mechanism. And then you can again get the counts of information there. So you can see here it's about 300 odd would have quite significant reductions if you were to put in place an equal allocation. The point here really is that if you want to do this, try and understand the nitrate load limit setting process and what the implications are, you do need to have good information to make your good decisions. You need to have good information on that soil. So the key message, the SMAP NSD linkage demonstrates the potential benefit of being able to combine these two things. We can really make the most of that analytical measured data, extrapolating it out with SMAP, but just think how much better it would be if we had all more information in the NSD to how much better our pedotransfer functions would be. With the informatics technology, we now have a powerful and flexible soil information system. The beauty of it is that as soon as we add on a little bit more, like when Trevor adds in the kaikoura, we immediately have access to the water holding capacity and all of those other functions, the vulnerability and so on. It just automatically flows through. But we can't achieve the regional water quality outcomes without that good soil information. So that's the end of that section. You get a chance for some more questions.